When the ground opens up beneath your feet, call both the warriors and the doctors. There's an infection to purge. Hiya! Hope y'all are having a lovely day wherever you are. And if not, I hope I can help with that, even just a little, with my freaks and weirdos. This week, we're going to make an interpretation of the classic idea of a dungeon core. Now, to run you all through the structure of this show, every week we come up with a monster, make up some lore, then assign a name, some abilities, stats, and core phrases to make a completed monster card. If you want more detail on that process, here's a link to the tutorial on the top right side of your screen. Check it out when you're done with this video. Though today we'll have us breaking from the format due to a unique situation that will lead us down a strange and somewhat meaty path. And with that ominous warning, let's start chatting more specifically on what we're doing today. We're making an iteration on that idea of the dungeon core, as I already mentioned. It's a classic part of fantasy lore, as far as I know, originally made by the 1997 game Dungeon Keeper, though it's greatly evolved from that original concept. Now that we have a little bit of history, let's get started on the lore. The main reason for most dungeon cores in modern fantasy media and in games is essentially to explain the infinitely refilling dungeons that serve as basically theme parks for adventurers. Usually, this is achieved by stating something along the lines of, "The dungeon is a pseudo-organism powered by a core. That core creates magical breeding ground for a variety of monsters and generates treasure. And if that core were removed, the entire dungeon would collapse. So adventurers don't tend to take or destroy the core unless it is strictly necessary because of the economic and environmental fallout from the dungeon's destruction, leading to unbeneficial outcomes for the surrounding towns." And I'll admit, I've always found this explanation to be unsatisfying. The core doesn't really have much of a role in that scenario, and really it feels like an excuse rather than any sort of interesting function in the narrative. It's just there unless the story calls for the hero's party to do something. Well, let's fix this with our iteration. In anime, there are plenty of stories where dungeons serve as a release valve of something hidden under the earth, allowing that something to flow out instead of building up too much and leading to a dark army to spread across the land. We can take this idea and remix it with a more biological function stemming from that dungeon heart that we're making. Though, where do you think this phenomenon could be set? Those of you who were here last week may know where we're going with this. We're headed back to the Breathing Continent. So, for folks who don't know, the Breathing Continent is a setting that I've been lightly building up as we continue with this monster making show, though it has seemed to grow into a signature part of this channel. Main idea is that, well, the Breathing Continent is a living continent with all the features that entails. Arteries, hair, skin, sweat, much, much more. This is a creature that people have been living on for millennia, and they've gained a mutualistic symbiotic relationship. Today, we'll be outlining one of the major interactions of that relationship: infections. And as with any multicellular creature, the Breathing Continent has parasites that its immune system has to deal with. But because of its size, the parasites are much large enough to be called monsters. Unfortunately, plain old white blood cells and fevers won't be able to take care of all those nasty beasties, especially when they bunch up in one area. That's where the adventurers come in. They help to kill those infectious parasites and remove foreign objects, like gold or magic items. Of course, over the millennia of this process going on, the Breathing Continent has evolved a way for adventurers to signal when the dungeon is cleared out: the dungeon heart. Or more accurately, the dungeon nerve center, as this is a mass of nerves. This part of the dungeon is grown in the deepest part of the infection and can be cut out and removed to signal to the breathing continent that everything is gone. It's cleared out, clean, ready to be closed down and healed. Then the adventurers can head over to the next infection/dungeon to help clear that out and continue going on and on and on, healing the breathing continent. And with that, we now have a strong lore explanation of the dungeon core trope linked to our specific setting. Instead of being a strange object of unknown origins that just happens to make a perfect playground for adventurers, it's an integral part of a body's healing process and represents an important aspect of the relationship between the breathing continent and its residents. The breathing continent gets infections, and when they become too much to handle, it opens up a dungeon out of the ground with a heart at the deepest level to allow adventurers to tell the breathing continent when they're done cleaning the infected area. Now, let's get our card and make this, well, not a monster, more like, I suppose, object, trap, treasure? Sure, we'll call it a piece of treasure. No, it's one that can only be safely recovered after the dungeon is cleared out, and once removed, it will lead to its collapse. That's sort of like a trap, I guess? Either way, it doesn't really fit within our normal pattern of abilities, stats, and core phrases. Not sure how to rethink of this. Oh, I have an idea. Let's use one of the other card formats I made a while back. This can be for non-creature cards specifically going on in the future. But what are we going to put in that text box? Well, let's start with a name. That's easy enough. Heart of the Infection presents the base idea of the infection dungeon while not giving everything away. Next, we can toss in some of what we've already established. We know that the infection dungeon will collapse and start to heal, so let's represent that. Maybe some key wording from card games? Trap. When this is taken, begin the dungeon collapse. We also have the idea of the monster infection needing to be cleared out. Let's put something similar in there for that. Again, using keywording to help. Requirement. Clear dungeon of all threats. Finally, let's figure out what the adventurer could get from this piece of treasure. The first thing would be easy. Let's give them a token for their work, helping the breathing continent. Maybe something similar to what a deity would grant, since we kind of are on that scale. Boon, thanks of the breathing continent. The next thing can be why the heart of the infection is valuable in its own merits. Maybe it's a really strong magic crafting material. It could allow folks to manipulate flesh, or more specifically, how about we let it connect to the nervous systems of other creatures on contact, especially since it's already a piece of a nervous system. Let's use the Errant Challengers crafting system, linked to the core rulebook in the description below, to help out with labeling the rest of this. It's a legendary material, so 3 aspects. Corruption is used to generally represent things related to the body. Then under that, blood specifically represents organs and internal fluids. Finally, the infection. Oh, that's easy. It's monster, the thing that literally signals that monsters are infecting the breathing continent. Alrighty, let's toss it in there. Legendary material, corruption, blood, monster. Grants, nerveling. And that's that. Thank you all so much for everyone coming around today. This was a bit of an experiment, and I hope you enjoyed it. This channel has brought me so much joy with these projects and being able to chat with some of y'all in the comments. On that note, we just recently passed 50 subscribers, and I'm looking forward to getting up to 100 someday. If you want to help out with that, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend who might like with this kind of stuff. I was first introduced to some of my favorite channels that way. Folks tend to enjoy being shown what you like, and while you're doing that, how about you check on your family? Whether chosen or blood, they'll be happy to hear from you. With that, let's bring this video to a close. For those of you with dark skies, good nights. And if you have bright days, good morning. Whatever part of the world you're from, I hope you have a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, and night. Goodbye!